Imagine finding a mistaken $5 million deposit in your family's bank account and using it to buy a seat in Congress.
I mean, it sounds like a Hollywood thriller, right?
Yeah.
But federal prosecutors and a massive new congressional report are alleging that this is exactly what unfolded in a recent Florida election.
Yeah, we are jumping right into a huge breaking story today for this deep dive, and it's one that really hits home if you care about how your hard-earned tax dollars are handled or, frankly, mishandled by bureaucrats.
Right, exactly.
So, Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick of Florida is suddenly facing a staggering 242-page House ethics report. And this thing details 27 distinct violations. Plus, if that wasn't enough, she is simultaneously dealing with a federal indictment that carries a potential 53 years in prison.
Which is just a massive amount of trouble all at once.
Oh, yeah. Huge. We have a giant stack of documents today to help us understand this.
Yeah.
We've got the Department of Justice's formal charges, the official House ethics report, a highly critical petition launched by the Florida GOP, and independent reporting from CBS and the Associated Press.
And, right up front, our mission today isn't to play judge or jury. The goal is strictly to track the paper trail these investigators have laid out. We want to examine the granular mechanics of how a simple, a severe clerical error by FEMA supposedly transformed into this elaborate campaign finance and money laundering operation.
Exactly. And before we get into the weeds, we are laying down a strict ground rule for you listening. We are impartially reporting the contents of these politically charged sources. We do not take any sides.
Right.
We do not endorse the viewpoints of the GOP petition demanding her resignation, nor do we endorse the Congresswoman's defense. She strongly maintains her innocence, by the way, and publicly called the indictment an unjust, baseless sham.
Yep. So our job is simply to look at the facts, the allegations, and the underlying financial mechanisms exactly as they are presented in the material.
So to understand the sheer scale of those 27 ethics violations, we first have to rewind to the height of the pandemic. We have to examine this single massive mistake regarding emergency disaster relief funds.
All right, let's unpack the origin of the money. Investigators point to Trinity Healthcare Services, which is a company co-founded by the Congresswoman's stepfather. Back in 2021, Trinity secured a COVID-19 vaccine staffing contract.
And here is where classic government incompetence kicks in. The state of Florida admits that a severe clerical error occurred during a payout from FEMA. Trinity was supposed to receive $50,000.
But instead, they were accidentally wired over $5 million.
Which is just wild to me. $5 million taxpayer dollars just poof into the wrong account. And nobody at FEMA noticed.
Yeah, and according to the Justice Department, the company did not pick up the phone to report the error or return the funds. Instead, the indictment alleges that the money immediately began flowing outward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Investigators tracked the funds moving from Trinity to the EC firm, which is a company owned by the Congresswoman's brother. From there, it moved to her own consulting firm, SEM Consulting. And eventually, the money reached the ultimate destination, her congressional campaign accounts.
The numbers in the report are completely staggering. Over the course of 99 separate, distinct transactions, she allegedly pumped $6,006,325.39 into her campaign.
It's unbelievable.
Let's put that in perspective for a second. Her historical annual salary from that family healthcare company was just $86,000. It's like the bank accidentally putting $5 million in your checking account, but instead of calling the fraud department, you immediately start passing the cash out to your friends to drop into your tip jar at work.
That is a perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And the central question the federal indictment raises is why the money had to move through so many different accounts before hitting the campaign. The technical term for this phase of money laundering is layering.
Layering.
Yeah, layering.
Right.
The primary objective is to create as much distance as possible between the original dirty source of the funds, so the unreturned FEMA overpayment, and the final destination.
Wait, let me stop you there. Because if I just take a massive, illegal $5 million check and bounce it through my brother's consulting firm before sending it to my campaign, the Federal Election Commission still sees a massive check coming from a consulting firm. Doesn't a sudden multi-million-dollar transfer trigger an immediate audit anyway?
Oh, absolutely.
So how does bouncing it through family businesses actually hide anything from the government?
Well, bouncing a single massive check would trigger all the alarms. That is why sophisticated layering doesn't work like a simple relay race. Think of it less like handing off a baton and more like a river delta.
Ah, okay. Like splitting it up.
Exactly. You take a massive illegal flood of $5 million, which would easily wipe out a dam and trigger every regulatory alarm, and you divert it into dozens of tiny, legal-looking streams. You commingle the illegal money with legitimate business revenue, you pay fake invoices,
Right.
you break the funds into smaller, unremarkable transfers. By the time those 99 separate streams reach the campaign ocean, no one realizes they all originated from the exact same initial flood.
So the money gets washed through the businesses, but it still has to legally enter the political arena. According to the sources, she utilized the illusion of the self-funded candidate.
Yes.
She publicly touted her 2021 special election campaign as being bankrolled by her own success. She basically told the public she was just a brilliant businesswoman using her hard-earned money to serve her community.
But bank records obtained by congressional investigators shatter that illusion entirely. They reveal a pattern where she artificially inflated her campaign's cash on hand right before mandatory Federal Election Commission reporting deadlines.
This specific tactic blew my mind when I read it. The report details an instance where she deposited $2 million into her campaign account just 1 week before a public filing deadline.
Right.
But almost immediately after the deadline passed, she withdrew $1.98 million back out of the account.
Yep.
If the entire goal is to hide stolen government money, why draw a giant red circle around yourself by dropping $2 million into a heavily monitored political account right before a public deadline?
Because the strategy is entirely about projecting financial dominance. In the political world, your quarterly FEC report is your public scoreboard.
Okay, to scare off challengers.
Exactly. When you show up on paper with millions of dollars sitting in the bank, you instantly scare off potential primary challengers. You signal to voters, journalists, and legitimate donors that you are a juggernaut. It creates the perception of inevitable victory.
Wow.
And in this specific race, the stakes could not have been higher. She won that 2021 special election primary by exactly 5 votes.
5 votes. Out of tens of thousands cast, a 5-vote margin means a single radio ad or a single mailer could have tipped the scale.
Yeah.
That fake financial scoreboard very likely won her a seat in the United States Congress. And she wasn't operating in a vacuum here. The investigators actually found text messages explicitly proving this fake loan strategy was premeditated.
They did. The ethics report highlights a highly damaging written text exchange between the Congresswoman and a campaign advisor.
What did it say?
The advisors suggested a specific fundraising goal for the quarter, and the Congresswoman replied that her strategy was to loan the campaign at least $1.5 to $2 million, explicitly adding, quote, "I'm not planning on using that amount, just leveraging."
And the advisor replied, "Indeed, but nobody has to know that." And she responded, "Yes."
Right.
I mean, putting "nobody has to know" in writing when discussing federal campaign finance filings is a prosecutor's dream.
Oh, absolutely. But the scheme didn't rely solely on massive fake loans. The sources also detail the extensive use of what the DOJ calls straw donors.
Right, I saw that. Trinity, the family healthcare company, transferred thousands of dollars to the Congresswoman's sister and to her former chief of staff, Nadege LeBlanc.
And those 2 women then immediately turned around and wrote checks to the campaign under their own names.
Which is wild.
We have to look at the mechanics of federal contribution limits to understand why straw donors are so aggressively prosecuted. Federal law strictly caps how much a single individual or corporation can donate to a specific candidate.
Right, to prevent billionaires from just buying politicians outright.
Exactly. When you funnel money through friends, family members, or employees, you completely bypass those individual contribution limits. You are effectively taking a massive, illegal chunk of influence and breaking it into smaller, legal-looking pieces disguised as grassroots support.
But even with fake loans and family straw donors, you can't realistically process $5 million. The math simply doesn't work. To absorb that level of cash, the operation had to expand outward into a complex, hidden web of outside political action committees, PACs, and nonprofits.
And this expansion is where the dark money web fully emerges in the investigator's timeline.
Yeah.
The House Ethics Report details massive infusions of cash suddenly hitting outside groups. We see entities like Leadership in Action PAC, NACEON PAC, and a specific organization called Truth and Justice, Inc., receiving staggering sums.
Truth and Justice alone received $982,379, and investigators noted that almost all of that money came directly from entities tied to the Congresswoman. I am looking at the flowchart for Truth and Justice, Inc., and it is dizzying. For instance, the report mentions a company called Petrogas Haiti. They transferred $810,000 to an organization run by the Congresswoman's husband. His organization then funneled the money to Truth and Justice, which then used the funds to buy campaign ads supporting her. How is a setup like Truth and Justice, Inc. even legal?
Well, Truth and Justice, Inc. was set up as a 501c4 nonprofit, which is the ultimate vehicle for dark money in modern politics. Unlike a traditional campaign account where every $50 donation must be publicly reported to the FEC, certain nonprofits are not legally required to disclose their donors.
So when the campaign buys a television ad, the public simply sees a disclaimer stating, paid for by Truth and Justice.
Exactly. The paper trail effectively hits a brick wall. It subverts the entire foundation of campaign finance transparency. The laws exist so you, the voter, know exactly who is paying to influence your ballot.
But when money bounces from a foreign-linked gas company to a husband's nonprofit to an outside PAC, the public is entirely blinded to who is actually pulling the strings.
Precisely.
So the financial scoreboard tactic works. She wins by 5 votes, secures her power, and heads to Washington, D.C. But the fundamental problem with running a campaign fueled by hidden money and massive favors is that those initial donors eventually expect a return on their investment.
Yeah, they do.
And the sources show the alleged rule-breaking followed her right into the halls of Congress. The ethics report cites her for severely misusing official taxpayer resources. She apparently allowed an unpaid campaign advisor to perform official congressional duties, specifically coordinating taxpayer-funded franked communications.
And the rules separating campaign activities from official congressional duties are incredibly strict for a reason. Franking is a privilege that allows members of Congress to send official mailers and communications to their constituents at the taxpayer's expense.
Right.
It is arguably an incumbent's biggest legal advantage. Because it's funded by public money, it is highly illegal to use franking for campaign purposes, which is why mixing unpaid political operatives with official government staff is a severe violation.
And the abuses of power detailed in the report escalate significantly when we look at community project funding requests. These are essentially earmarks, where a member of Congress asks for federal tax money to be directed to a specific local project in their district.
This is your money as a taxpayer.
Exactly. And the report alleges she directed her staff to prioritize funding requests from her political allies, specifically naming her PAC treasurer, Michael Joseph.
The level of aggression she allegedly used to push these earmarks through is notable. In one specific instance detailed by investigators, her own congressional staff researched a project recommended by her political ally and explicitly warned her that the project looked entirely fictitious.
Wow.
The staff pointed out that the organization's website had just been launched days prior, and the official recommendation letters were riddled with glaring errors.
Look, I try to put myself in the shoes of a newly elected politician. I can somewhat understand how someone might accidentally blur the lines between campaign staff and official staff in the chaotic first months of taking office.
Sure.
But actively ignoring your own team's desperate warnings to funnel federal tax dollars into a fake project crosses a massive line. How do you possibly justify that to the staff members you were forcing to process the paperwork?
Well, the justification was purely based on power dynamics. When the staffer pushed back on the fake project, the political ally directly complained to the Congresswoman.
Okay.
The Congresswoman then called the staffer on the phone, stated that the ally, quote, was not going anywhere, and ordered the staffer to apologize to him.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and she then submitted the questionable funding projects to the committee anyway.
Forcing a government employee to apologize to a political operative for trying to stop a fraudulent use of tax dollars is a stunning display of leverage.
It really is.
And when the House Ethics Committee finally caught wind of all this and came knocking to investigate, she completely locked the doors.
She did. The committee formally cited her for a severe lack of candor and diligence. The 242-page report states that she caused repeated, intentional delays, failed to treat the serious allegations with any respect, and ultimately invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
Wow, pleading the Fifth to Congress.
Yeah, to avoid testifying or handing over subpoenaed documents. Refusing to cooperate with a bipartisan ethics probe brings direct discredit to the House of Representatives itself, which triggers a completely separate set of rules violations.
So what does this actually mean for the political landscape today? The people living in her Florida district are currently stuck in the middle of a massive legal circus.
They are.
With this mountain of evidence laid out by both the House Ethics Committee and the DOJ, the fallout is chaotic. The Florida GOP has launched a statewide petition demanding her immediate resignation or formal expulsion from Congress. And they are heavily criticizing Democratic leadership for staying silent, pushing the narrative that silence equals complicity.
The political tightrope here is incredibly thin. Democratic leaders, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have treaded very carefully. They've released statements reiterating that she is innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But the internal pressure in Washington is mounting rapidly because public house ethics hearings are exceptionally rare.
How rare are we talking?
The last time a sitting member of Congress faced a public, televised ethics hearing was over 15 years ago. It signals that the committee believes the evidence is overwhelming.
Meanwhile, back in her district, she is facing a fierce primary challenge from a candidate named Elijah Manley. He is currently running aggressive campaign ads, flat out calling her a crook,
And she retaliated by filing a $1 million defamation lawsuit against him.
which a judge almost immediately dismissed.
Exactly. The animosity reached a boiling point at a recent town hall meeting. The Congresswoman Manley got into a heated exchange, ending with her repeatedly yelling "your mama" at him into a microphone.
Your mama. Just absolute chaos.
The town hall incident perfectly highlights the sheer chaos surrounding this specific congressional seat, and the looming threat of an expulsion vote on the House floor is very real.
Yeah.
We'd only have to look at the recent precedent set by George Santos. He was formally expelled from the House by his colleagues following a similarly scathing ethics report, and that happened even before he was convicted of his federal charges in court. Several lawmakers are already threatening to force a similar, highly publicized vote here.
It is a wild, rapidly developing situation. To pull all these threads together from our sources today, we are looking at a sitting United States Congresswoman who stands accused of taking a $5 million FEMA clerical error, laundering it through family businesses, funneling it into dark money PACs, and using it to buy a congressional seat by a margin of just 5 votes.
Yeah, we are looking at text messages, plotting fake loans, family members acting as straw donors to break federal laws, and a politician allegedly rewarding her bagmen with taxpayer-funded earmarks for fake projects.
Zooming out, this case is a stark examination of the vulnerabilities woven into our deepest systems. It exposes the massive blind spots in emergency disaster funding oversight.
Right. FEMA just lost $5 million and didn't notice.
Exactly. And it perfectly illustrates the easily manipulated loopholes of modern campaign finance, where dark money nonprofits can completely shield the true buyers of political power from the voting public.
It's a huge problem.
And it leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling question for you to mull over. If a simple clerical error of $5 million can go completely unnoticed by the government long enough to potentially finance an entire congressional campaign and subvert a federal election, how many other clerical errors from the billions of dollars in pandemic relief are quietly sitting in bank accounts right now, funding endeavors we don't even know about?
It's a scary thought.
Imagine finding a mistaken $5 million deposit in your family's bank account. You just have to wonder who else got lucky and exactly what they bought with it.